Hey, good morning. It is today's Wednesday. Today is January 28th. It's about 8 a.m. Eastern time on the 28th. Month of January just flew by for me. Again, if you're into Bitcoin, we are at block height 934,086. Yeah, today I want to talk through a little bit more, I guess, about some topics that talked about yesterday, which is mainly opportunity cost. I wanted to get into this whole debate of, hey, should I go do my own thing, or should I, work a corporate job for a long time, maybe jump around different corporate jobs. And there's no right answer here. I want to lead with that. I've known clients that have done really well working at a big organization, and they make high six figures, seven figures sometimes. It can be a really good opportunity there. And you're very much hands off in terms of it's one of those you can go to work, do your job, and leave. Now, once you climb the rungs of that ladder, that becomes less and less true, and it depends on who you report to and the pressures there. But I guess it's a different sort of pressure than if you're trying to run your own thing and you start small and can you make it, and then you hire people, can you hit payroll, can you scale, all of those questions that entrepreneurs have to deal with on top of the actual work that they're having to do. And all of this really came about because, again, I just talk about things that are going on in real time in my life. I was texting with a friend last night who is a plumber, and I was asking him, hey, man, I know we've talked about maybe you going off and breaking away from the company that you're working with right now, and do you want to start your own thing? And, the response that I got back was, well, maybe, but, I'm also seeing like if we wanted to try to implement something like AI into it to help scale, well, here's the reasons why that's not working in the current model with some of the other, companies in town that are trying it and all those things. And I came to this point in the conversation where I almost texted him this tweet that I remember seeing, I don't know, several years ago now, that says the pessimists get to be right, but the optimists get to be rich. And I come back to that a lot because there are people that it's just, and it's not their fault. I mean, of course, it's just how you've trained your brain to think. You can change how you think, and your life experiences kind of play into that as well. But I just wanted to kind of opine on the fact that, at least in Bitcoin world, and that's where I've learned it the best, is you can just do things, right? You'll hear me say that a lot because it's been proven to be true in my life time and time again, whether it's personal or it's business related. And that whole mantra comes back to, you're an optimist. If you just believe that you can do things, you will do those things more times than not. Sometimes you'll fail, but more times than not, you actually will be able to accomplish those things. And obviously, then that opens new doors. So I just want everyone, especially in this, again, this new world that we're living in, where, automations they abound. I see the world through this lens of there's so much opportunity, especially if you are willing to put yourself out there, if you're willing to take risks. I think that you can get way more done in a shorter amount of time than you've been able to in the past. And then in my head, the question then comes to, well, who am I doing this with? Because I know if you've been on Twitter in the last, several days, people are like, oh, I built this team of AI agents. They're doing this, that, the other. I hope that's the world I hope doesn't take over completely, because I used to be a solo shop. I used to do everything just me. And I remember I ended up working out of a client's office, would have been like 5 years ago. I started working out of their office just so that I had some like camaraderie and, people to cut up with and talk to during, lunch or whenever. And I don't think we want to go to a world where everyone is this like solo entrepreneur that is just interacting with, bots that do this task or the other. what's been so fulfilling for me, and it's only been in the last really 2 years, is to start actually working with teams again in companies that, I run at this point. And that has been really fulfilling, to see other people get on board and go all in is really cool. And everyone has a role to play. There's people who take more risk than others, whether it's, money, capital, or it's reputation, whatever it is, right? And then there's other people who take less of that risk on, and they're compensated accordingly to that. And I think everyone they're in a stage, and you can, I remember when I was in a spot where I worked for the CPA firm, and now I run the CPA firm. It's a different world, right? And it's not it's not always as pretty or as glamorous as, if you're just an employee. You might look up and you're like, oh man, I'm sure things are going so well. And sometimes they are. And then other times, any business owner will tell you that there are seasons where it gets tough, right? And you've got to figure things out. So I guess, to come back to my friend who I was talking with on, do I make this jump? Do I kind of keep playing it safe? And by the way, keep playing it safe. That sounds more and more attractive the further along in life you get, because responsibilities abound. You have to make sure you feed your family, pay your mortgage. It's different than if you're just a young person with close to no responsibilities, no one really relying upon you. So do I play it safe or do I take the risk? Yeah, the advice I've always heard and that I've tried to live by is, it's all age based, really. That determines how quickly or how far you end up trying to take something. But in your 20s, I've always heard it said from people in my circle, I've found this to be really true, is just try as many things as you possibly can. Don't get sucked into this, I'm just going to do this one thing and put all my eggs in this basket. Especially, I don't think do that at a big company, because then you're just a number and you're kind of one dimensional, right? Versus, maybe jump jobs every couple years when you're in your 20s. I mean, just side note, that's the best way to get a raise these days, is to jump to another company that helps you get a 20-30% bump in pay versus, the 3 to 5 that they'll give you if you stay at a company. So 20s, try a bunch of different things, go work for different people, potentially hop different industries. In my experience, at least, I did the CPA firm. I then did corporate accounting at a real estate development company. Realized pretty quickly that wasn't for me, but did do it for about a year. But on the side, while I was there, was building out my own CPA firm, just because I had just gotten my CPA license, and so I was able to do that. And so I went from essentially the same work, but in a different way, right? So working at a CPA firm to running a CPA firm, and in between did the corporate thing. And even you know, as recent as a year, 2 years ago, was when I really went heavy into, okay, I'm taking on these Bitcoin clients. Okay, I identify this need, in at least in our own firm, of having to reconcile Bitcoin transactions with fiat transactions, all dollar denominated, yada yada. We're piecemealing tools together. So go to a software developer, we start up the software company, and then that leads to, now we've merged with a different firm, the startup software company. We've raised a little bit of money. We are acquiring customers as we speak. You're doing partnership deals with other companies, referral, agreements, all those things. And then the last thing for me that I'll mention is that we spun up the Bitcoin for Financial Services summit last year, and then that has turned into a podcast. So an annual summit in person each year, and then a weekly podcast. And then because of that, then that led me actually over here to do this personal brand stuff, because I think they're complementary, for you to get to know me a little bit better before you go down that path of potentially interacting with that content. And ultimately, a lot of people who find me on, hey, I went on this podcast or you saw one that we put out, reach out in, LinkedIn DMs or Twitter DMs or get my email or Calendly or whatever it looks like. And hey, we're hopping on the call. There's a problem that we've got, or maybe there's a way that they can help us. Okay, now how are we going to work together? And the opportunities that come out of that, I guess that's the whole point of this video really is you take that risk, you plant a seed. Maybe you did that 6 years ago, like I did, and then you watch that grow. And the hardest part is you have no idea how it's going to grow. It starts growing one way, but then I don't know, a storm hits and one of the branches falls down, a big branch, right? You thought you thought that was going to be a big part of the tree. You lose that big branch. You got to regroup. You're growing in other ways. You meet somebody that changes the trajectory. That's a really interesting way to kind of grow your network, your businesses, whatever it looks like. And I guess the main point is you can't see how that grows if you never plant it. And I kind of see this world as if you stay corporate, yes, very predictable, but you're essentially in some ways capped on opportunity and your destiny is just not in your own hands, right? You're reliant upon decision makers above you that, hopefully they deem your job to be worthy of still being paid every 2 weeks for the next decade. But who knows? Things change. There's layoffs that happen sadly all the time. And the last thing I'll say is you plant the seed. You're doing, we're a service business. A lot of people that I talk to run service businesses versus product sales online or something like that. So I guess this is a bit more specific for service businesses, but just take my plumbing friend, for example. Right now, he has one client. His client is his employer, right? He's got to keep that one client really happy to make sure they keep paying, paying his invoices, paying his payroll every 2 weeks. If he were to jump out and do his own things, it goes from one employee to one employer dynamic to now you will have one, worker to many employers or clients, whatever you'd like to call them, essentially many revenue sources. And if you're going to live in the service world, I think that that's a much more strategic way of going about things because, of course, people make mistakes, deadlines are dropped, you made a mistake on a project, whatever it might look like, you lose one client. Okay. Everyone, if you've worked in the service based business for long enough, you've lost a client. And so, okay, someone fires you. Well, that's, not the end of the world because you've got all these other clients that are still paying you. And now you have the opportunity to go replace that client with a new client. Whereas you get fired from your job and now that one person that was paying you or one company was paying you, and now you're looking for another one company to pay you. And so, yeah, I guess I would end there. It's interesting. There's obviously a ton of nuance, ton of responsibility and risk that comes with starting your own thing. It's not for everybody. But I did just want to paint the picture of how it was just what was on my mind this morning. This is how it's worked out for me. It's not been perfect, but it's opened a lot of doors. And it's been, more than anything, it's just been an interesting ride, which I think for a lot of people, in some ways, that's enough. They just want to be on an interesting journey throughout their career versus a bit more predictable. You kind of know, you could look down the line. Like I remember that was one big thing that rubbed me the wrong way was you look, especially the corporate accounting job, you just look at the person who's like 2 or 3 levels above you and you look at their quality of life and you say, is that what I want? If I just stuck here, do I want to be like that person with, whatever their habits are, how they treat people, how much they have to work, what their, comp that you're, imagining it is looks like versus you can kind of customize your outcome over here. And you can customize it for failure as well. That's obviously the risk you take. I think that that's everything I really wanted to chat on today. Hopefully didn't go too long. Try to keep these around, 15 to 25, 30 minutes, maybe at the most. But I guess at this point, you're starting to get a sense of what we are, what we're talking about here, some different things that you're kind of getting a sneak peek into how my brain works, how I'm thinking about some things. If there's any questions you've got about this topic, or if you're thinking about, hey, maybe I've thought about, oh, this idea, maybe I do it. Obviously, things are easier than they've ever been to go build, at least from a software standpoint. Now it's more so like who has the will to actually go and execute, who has the relationships that you could actually take to market and leverage those relationships to bring revenue in. That's honestly, that's the name of the game. Now it's moved away from, can your product technically work, to how do you collaborate with the right people? And that's why, I mean, that's my whole shtick, I guess, with a part of this video, is just being like, work with the right people, whether it's clients or your employer, employees, if that's the route you end up taking, or just other partners, outside partners that either you solve a problem for them, um, or they solve a problem for you. So I think I'll leave it there. If you like the video, obviously you can hit the like button. You can subscribe to this channel. And of course, like I've said in the past, you can share this with someone that you think it might be relevant for. So, if you've got a friend who they've been talking for a long time, or even for a little bit of time, about, hey, maybe I go try something else out, maybe instead of working for an event planning business, maybe I go start an event planning business. Yeah, send this video to them. I think that this could get them thinking about, what does it actually look like to take that jump? Um, and they can at least hear from someone who's done it before them and made it out okay. So, all right, I will leave it there. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and we will talk very soon.